This week I hope to give you all some inspiration on how to make any of your models really special and look a little bit like a diorama that is individual to you and your army. I'm using this impulsor I painted up recently for my white scars, and this back bay is just begging for some action. By action, of course, I mean manly man Space Marine diorama. I chose 2 spare bodies I had lying around. One, this horrible blue plastic from the old Imperium magazine, or Conquest I think it was actually called, one of those easy to build intercessors, and another kneeling pose from the Devastator squad. I glued together the intercessor. It was difficult because the plastic doesn't want to stick together, and also glued together the legs and torso of our kneeling guy. He's going to be the first person we work on here. When I was considering what a Space Marine would be doing in the moments prior to battle before they disembark from their assault transport, I was reminded of the short series Astartes, where they were blessing their bolt guns with incense. So whilst I couldn't quite get incense hanging out of this hand, I took this spare arm from the upgrade sprue for the vehicles from the Horus Heresy new plastic kits. The pose is supposed to be holding onto the cupola, but actually if I kit bashed a bolt gun and stuck it on one of the benches, it might look like he's blessing his weapon, or at the very least, reaching for it. This really helped with the kneeling pose, because the only other thing I could really think of was him rummaging through a box which just doesn't have the same gravitas. Throughout the entire build, I was dry fitting and trying out new poses and locations constantly, which is exactly what I'm doing here with my half-built Marine and his bolt gun. This allowed me to decide where things were going to go and make the body actually fit into those spaces better. I didn't want to build an arm just to have it not fit later on, especially if I've already painted it. I took the binoculars, which won't really be visible and so will just look like a weapon cleaning kit or a ammo pack or a pouch or a box or anything really, from the Horus Heresy upgrade sprue as well, and attached it to a generic reaching out arm so we could have it hanging by his side. We're never really going to see this because he's in the dark corners of the impulsor, but if he didn't have an arm, that would look really weird. I also decided to have him helmetless, so I took this beaky helm and cut the neck joint off of it so it could sit flat on the bench next to his bolt gun. I felt that having him not wearing his helm prior to going into battle, but obviously about to put it on, made it a bit more of an intimate scene. He's really prepping himself before he encloses himself in his power armor and arms himself for war. Using the White Scars Primaris upgrade sprue, I found this cool head with like a side knot. I don't know, it looks quite Mongolian, it's quite cool. With our preparing Marine done, it was time to figure out where this other guy was going to go. I liked the idea of it being an open top transport, somebody leaning out over the top, so I stood the body on top of one of the benches just to see if it could actually reach. There aren't any grab bars, but I wanted him holding onto the pannier on the top that's holding all the equipment, so I took the knife throwing arm from the Infiltrator's kit and removed the hand throwing the knife. Whilst it would be cool to have him chucking a knife from the side of his moving assault transport, I'm not certain even Space Marines are that good. The audacity of someone trying to use a throwing knife from a moving transport, especially when he's going to have a bolt gun in his other hand, was just too much to bear. With that Horus Heresy upgrade sprue coming in clutch again so we can use the commander's open hand to be grabbing the top of the vehicle. I advise you, if you ever find weird arms or arms that are unique to a kit that you're not using at that moment, absolutely keep them, because you never know, like now with the knife arm and the commander's arm kit bashing together, that you can use them for something beautiful. Once I was happy with the fit, I had to use several rounds of glue to make sure this arm actually stuck to the body, because this blue plastic, I don't know if I've mentioned it, it's terrible. Taking another spare arm from the Infiltrator sprue, I used this bolt carbine in his offhand. I originally wanted it hanging by his side, but as we'll see in a second, that didn't quite work, so I had to have him almost hanging out the side of the vehicle. This is exactly the reason you dry fit, because if I'd glued it in and painted it, this would be a nightmare right now, because it's such an easy fix with a slight rotation of the shoulder, but I've already painted it, I could be chipping away a lot of paint. Now I know it's a hover vehicle, but if they're hitting any bumps, he's dropping his gun off the side, so let's hope he has a good grip on it. I decided to give him another sort of half unhelmed head with the Reaver skull here. The Reavers aren't really useful in the game, so I actually have a fair few bits lying around from when I naively bought them at the start of 8th edition, but hey ho, the heads are cool. On a great suggestion from one of my friends, Monkey, I decided to roll out some putty into a nice sort of blanket or mat for this bolt gun to lie on in the back. Whether it's a rag from a weapons cleaning kit or an actual dedicated surface, I haven't decided, but it's a cool little detail that adds a little bit more colour to the back, especially as I'm going to paint it red. I got it to the perfect size, but upon peeling it up from the Vaseline surface, it stretched out. But ultimately that's not a problem, it doesn't look too bad, it hangs off the side of the bench now, which is another cool lived-in feature, and the bolt gun fits on top of it, so win-win, win-win. I lightly superglued these guys to bases for easy painting. Now I'm not showing you how I painted these guys today, but there is a video on how I paint white scars linked in the top right now if you want to look at how I did these. Now obviously it's too late to change very much, but I still decided to dry fit the guys into their positions just to make sure one last time before I superglue anything that they are exactly where they are supposed to be. Now on to sealing the deal, I'm going to use my tweezers and light mounts of super glue to get these guys into the impulsor. These models have been varnished and I'm not scraping the tweezers or anything, so don't worry about paint coming off, none did. I superglued both the helmet and the bolt gun to the top of the rag and then moved in our kneeling guy into position to bless his weapons. Or grab them, depending on what you want him to be doing. Now superglue is usually a massive pain to work with, but it was actually really good this time and I don't know why. It made the whole process really simple and for once I didn't get it all over my fingers. I can say that now because the project's done. If I'd said this halfway through it would have gone horribly wrong. Before we superglue in our standing guy, I'm going to add some pigments around the feet of our kneeling man. This is so we can reach him easily without knocking the other guy off the bench or chipping any paint. I'm adding these pigments because you might have noticed the side of the vehicle is coated in it, the back bay already had a light sprinkling of, and it just makes sense. They've been in and out of this vehicle, it's open top, there's dust, there's wind, it's going to be everywhere. Plus it really helps the vehicle look lived in, or at least in constant use. There's nowhere to lie down in there, so lived in probably isn't the right term. We did the exact same thing with our standing man, leaning out over the top and about to drop his bolt gun into the void, and I also added some pigments onto him. It's a really satisfying process, and if you haven't tried pigments, I highly recommend it. They're incredibly messy, but the results, I hope you'll agree, are absolutely worth it. Just give it a nice spritz of varnish afterwards. It'll dull down the effect a tad, it won't look quite as dusty, but it also means you don't get covered in the stuff every time you want to use your models. Now as I was adding the pigments to these guys, it did look to me that there might be something missing. And if you've seen any of my other tank videos, linked up in the top right corner now, you'll know I love adding crates of equipment to it. So of course I had to add some to this vehicle. I say some, I mean one, I didn't want to obscure the detail. I used this 3D printed crate and a few bits from various retailers. This backpack from Anvil Industries with a cool goblet on, which definitely suits the vibe. Some Imperial Guard bits that look leather, and a few grenades and missiles. Why not? Supergluing all these parts together, I dry fitted, and I felt there was just a bit too much of a gap at the back, so I also added a chainsword from the Mark III kit onto the side. This could be our kneeling Marine's weapon that he's just left hanging there. Adding little things like this is firstly really fun to kit bash, really easy to paint, and also just adds a ton of character. Anyway, I very quickly painted it, it didn't take long at all contrast and a little bit of dry brushing and a tiny bit of shading, superglued it in and our vehicle was good to go. I hope you enjoyed this video. I've been Sam, here's the final result, and I'll see you next time.